podcast.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's deep dive. I've got something really quite powerful to share with you. Something that could genuinely change the way you learn, well, pretty much anything. If you've ever felt like you're just drowning in information, or maybe stuff you learned yesterday feels like it's vanished today, or you just wish there was a better way, maybe not a shortcut, but a smarter way to master things, then this is definitely for you. We're diving deep into how Japanese students seem to learn so incredibly fast, how they hold on to information and, build these really solid study habits.
It is fascinating, isn't it? Because it's clearly not just about putting in endless hours. There's a system there and, a deeply ingrained mindset that's really key.
Right. And our sources today, particularly excerpts from Mastering Learning, the Japanese approach, they really unpack that.
They do.
So our mission really is to pull out those core techniques, the thinking behind them, and show you step by step how you can actually lift all these methods and use them right away, whatever it is you're trying to learn.
And it absolutely starts with the foundation, which is this core belief system.
Yeah.
It's something taught from, a very young age over there.
Okay.
The central idea is that effort, hard work, is way more important than just raw talent.
That feels huge. So the starting point isn't, am I naturally good at this, but more like, am I putting in the work?
Exactly. There's this word, ganbaru. It's hard to translate perfectly, but it basically means doing your absolute best, sticking with it, pushing through when things get tough. Determination, never giving up.
Ganbaru.
And because of that mindset, they don't really wait around for motivation to magically appear. They understand that progress comes from just consistently applying effort. You just start every day.
So the motivation isn't the fuel to get started. The action of starting is the fuel. That kind of flips the script, doesn't it? From waiting to doing, effort becomes the baseline.
It absolutely is, according to these sources anyway. It's the bedrock. Everything else, all the techniques, they're built right on top of that belief.
Okay, so if that's the mindset effort rules, just start. What are the actual practical techniques they use? The sources talk about repetition, but a very specific kind, right?
Yes, exactly. It's structured repetition. We often call it spaced repetition now.
Yeah.
And it's worlds away from just passively rereading your notes or, that last-minute cramming session.
Right, which we all know doesn't really stick. So how does it work? What's the actual mechanism there?
Well, the basic idea is you review the material multiple times, but critically, the time between reviews gets longer and longer. So you might learn something today, look at it again tonight, then again tomorrow, but then maybe you wait 3 days, then a week, and so on.
Okay.
The magic, if you will, happens because each review, especially when you've just started to forget it a little bit, forces your brain to work harder to pull that information back out. And it's that effortful retrieval that really locks it into your long-term memory.
Got it. So it's not just seeing it again, it's the work of retrieving it just as it's starting to fade. That makes the connection stronger. The source had that vocabulary example, didn't it?
Precisely. Learn, say 10 words today. Test yourself tonight. Do it again tomorrow. Now, if you got a word right easily, maybe you push the next review out to 3 days from now.
Okay.
But if you missed one, well, you review that one again tomorrow. You're constantly adjusting based on how well you recall things. It focuses your effort.
And that's something anyone could apply, really. You don't need fancy software, although things like Anki are built around this principle. You could just use flashcards or even a notebook and a calendar, right, to schedule those review times.
Absolutely. It makes your study time so much more efficient because you're hitting that information right at the sweet spot for your brain to really consolidate it.
That idea of retrieval, it leads right into the next big technique, doesn't it? Active recall. Sounds a bit, intense. What is it exactly?
It's basically forcing your brain to actively pull information out of your memory rather than just passively looking at it again. Like reading a chapter, then closing the book and trying to jot down the key points from scratch.
Okay.
Or using flashcards where you must produce the answer before you flip it over. No peeking.
Closing the book? Yeah, that sounds hard. Maybe even a little frustrating.
And that's kind of the point. That struggle, that mental effort to retrieve, that's what strengthens the memory trace. The sources really emphasize this. The more you practice pulling information out, the easier it gets to access it later when you need it.
Right. I like that related idea the sources bring up too, trying to teach the material out loud. Even if there's no one there, just explain it to the wall or something.
Oh, that's such a great test. If you can't explain a concept clearly, without looking at your notes, you probably haven't quite grasped it yet. And this ties into why Japanese teachers often encourage group study. It's not just about sharing notes passively. It's about students explaining concepts to each other. That's powerful active recall in action, and it helps process the information, not just memorize it.
Okay, so they've got the effort mindset. They use smart techniques like spaced repetition, active recall. But doing this day after day, consistency must be huge. How do they manage that? Is it just sheer willpower?
Well, this is where discipline and routine really kick in. Like we talked about with Gambaru, they don't seem to rely on waiting for motivation. Instead, they build study right into their daily routine. It becomes almost automatic, like brushing your teeth. It's scheduled, it's usually daily, often the same time each day. And crucially, the sources say it's done with like zero tolerance for distractions during that time.
So it's less about feeling inspired and more about just having that blocked off time and doing it.
Exactly that. It becomes a non-negotiable part of the day. And within that scheduled time, they often structure it using study blocks. Maybe say 25 or 30 minutes of intense focus, followed by a short break.
That sounds a lot like the Pomodoro technique, actually. Those focus sprints, then a quick breather.
It definitely shares that core principle, yeah.
Yeah.
The key is that intense, unbroken concentration during the study block. And get this, the sources even suggest using a basic kitchen timer.
A kitchen timer? Why?
To specifically avoid using your phone timer, because picking up your phone, even just for the timer, opens the door to notifications, messages, getting sidetracked. It seems like a small thing, but it highlights that real commitment to minimizing distractions.
And that commitment to focus leads right into the next key element, the study environment itself.
Yes, absolutely. The expectation often is studying in silence, or at least near silence. No TV droning on, no music with distracting lyrics, and definitely no phone buzzing away.
Right. It's about training the brain to concentrate deeply, isn't it?
It is. It's about giving your brain the space it needs to really dive deep into the material without being constantly pulled away by external stimuli.
Makes sense.
So if you really want to learn efficiently and build that focus muscle, setting up a clean, quiet space and, actively shutting off those notifications, it's pretty essential.
Okay, now here's one that might seem a bit weird, or maybe counterintuitive to some listeners. The idea of reviewing the basics, even stuff you think you've already mastered.
Yeah, it does sound a bit redundant at first glance, doesn't it?
Yeah.
But the sources point this out as a really common practice. You might see high school students reviewing, say, elementary math concepts or basic kanji characters they learned years back.
But why? If they already know it, what's the point?
Because the basics are the absolute bedrock everything else is built on. Think about it like a top athlete constantly drilling fundamental movements, or a professional musician practicing scales every single day. It's not because they've forgotten how. It's about keeping that foundation incredibly sharp, almost automatic. If those basic skills are solid and effortless, your brain has more capacity, more cognitive resources, freed up to tackle the new, more complex stuff much faster. It's about achieving automaticity with the fundamentals.
Ah, I see. So it's not a step backward, it's actually strategy. Revisiting basics isn't failure, it's about enabling faster progress later on.
Precisely. You're reinforcing those building blocks, making them second nature. And this applies across the board, revisiting basic vocab and grammar if you're learning a language, or fundamental logic if you're learning to code, for example.
Now, thinking beyond the classroom itself, the sources also mention learning that happens outside of regular school hours. First, these things called juku, the after-school cram schools.
Right, juku. They're a pretty significant part of the educational landscape there. They often focus on review, lots of practice, and pretty intensive preparation for exams.
Sounds intense.
They can be, yeah. But the key takeaway the sources highlight isn't just about the schools themselves. It's more about the mindset they reinforce. This idea that learning is a continuous daily effort. It doesn't just stop when the school bell rings.
That feels really applicable, doesn't it? Even if you don't have juku, just the idea of building in, say, 30 minutes of dedicated learning time into your day, totally separate from your job or formal classes.
Absolutely. It shifts learning from something confined to a specific place or time to, well, an ongoing personal project, a commitment.
The other big element mentioned for outside learning is immersion, right?
Yes. Now, obviously, students in Japan are naturally immersed in their own language and culture.
Yeah.
But the principle is something you can actively create for yourself, whatever you're learning.
So deliberately surrounding yourself with the subject matter.
Exactly. If you're learning Spanish, maybe change your phone's language setting, listen to Spanish podcasts, watch movies in Spanish. If you're learning about, astrophysics, start following astrophysicists on social media, watch documentaries, read articles. The sources mention how Japanese children naturally absorb kanji just by seeing the characters everywhere, on signs, on packaging, in comics. You can consciously try to replicate that kind of constant low-level exposure. Let the topic just kind of seep in.
Okay, let's try and pull these different threads together. Can we walk through that English vocabulary example from the source again, showing how all the pieces fit?
Sure, yeah. So imagine you decide, okay, I'm learning 10 new English words today. First step, active engagement. You don't just read the list. You look them up, you write them down, you read example sentences. Crucially, you try to make your own sentences using them.
Right, active from the start. Then what?
Then, maybe tonight, before bed, you apply active recall. Close the notebook. Try to write down all 10 words and their meanings purely from memory. See what sticks.
Okay, first retrieval tests.
Exactly. Tomorrow, you test yourself again. Spaced repetition, right. But maybe you mix it up. Try to listen for those words in an English podcast, or make some quick picture flashcards. Use a different angle.
Varying the method. Okay, and after a few more days, say 3 days later.
Quiz yourself again. Maybe simple flashcards this time. And then perhaps a week from the start.
Then what?
Maybe challenge yourself to write a short paragraph or even a little story that uses all 10 words correctly in context, so you see how it builds.
Yeah, I do.
It's that initial active learning, then immediate active recall, followed by spaced repetition over increasing time gaps and using different types of recall and engagement, listening, writing, visual cues to really solidify it from multiple angles.
It's definitely not one magic trick. It's a system. It's that systematic, daily, focused, effortful application of these smart techniques. Method driving the learning, not just waiting for motivation.
Exactly. So if we were to boil it all down, summarize the, let's say, 7 core takeaways we've pulled from these sources on the Japanese approach, it looks something like this. First, learning effectively isn't about magic or just talent. It comes from smart techniques and, importantly, discipline. Second, use spaced repetition. Review today, review tomorrow. That stretches those intervals out a few days, a week, and so on. Third, practice active recall constantly. Test yourself. Try to explain it out loud. Teach it, even to an imaginary audience. Fourth, set those daily study times. Build the routine. Make it a habit. Don't rely on waiting to feel like it. Fifth, cut out the distractions. Seriously, train your brain to focus deeply. Find or create a quiet space. Sixth, always review the basics. Keep that foundation rock solid. It actually speeds up learning the advanced stuff. And seventh, immerse yourselves. Surround your brain actively with the subject you want to learn.
That really captures the essence, doesn't it? The power distilled from this approach. And the most exciting part, I think, is that these are methods that you, listening right now, can start using today. It really does circle back to that core philosophy we started with. Effort trumps talent. Every single time.
Which really leaves a question for you, doesn't it? If learning is fundamentally a skill, one you can get much better at with the right methods and discipline, what skill out there, maybe one that seems really difficult right now, could you actually master just by changing how you approach learning it?
Yeah. What basics and something you thought you knew could you maybe revisit to build a stronger foundation? Or maybe what small daily learning routine could you actually commit to starting, well, maybe even today? Keep experimenting, keep putting in that effort, that ganbaru, and keep growing.